Right, okay, so just going to run you through my current DJ setup, how it works, and thinking behind it a bit. Been using Live for DJing for about 8 years. Vinyl, CDs. I didn't spend a lot of time with CDs actually before that. Vinyl mainly. And then I pretty quickly got into using Ableton for DJing because I just found that it met the needs that I had as a DJ. Really, although I did or was for a long while still using other programs like Tractor. For specific scenarios DJing, usually when I had to mix lots of different genres with complicated different time signatures or grooves or completely different genres and stuff, I found Tractor was just an easier tool to do that. But in terms of performing the music that I kind of produce and make, and sort of club DJing style, then this was definitely preferable to me than CDs. Just the amount of limitations that you have with CDs, and also kind of preferable to Tractor, just again limitations and things that were possible. Although of course with everything there are things that you have to make adjustments for. There are some things in Tractor that are really good that aren't quite present in Live in the way that they could be. But the thing about Live is that it's possible to do almost anything in there. You just have to know how to go about it, basically. Anyway, looking at my DJ set, you can see here this is a pretty standard setup. I've got deck A and deck B here. And in these decks, I've got really standard DJ controls, EQ, filter. I've also got some like a real-time audio reverse and a volume envelope generator. Just kind of extra little effects that I find I use quite a lot. I've also got reverbs and delays on sends for everything and a few different verbs and delays just to give me different things to play with. Again, all really simply set up. Loop A and Loop B do exactly that. They capture audio from either deck A or deck B respectively, and they loop it inside a beat repeat. So when this track becomes active, it automatically triggers the beat repeat, and then that in turn captures a loop and enables me to process it in the same way I'm processing the audio in deck A and B with filters, things like reverses and EQs. I've also got a couple of other things set up, but that's really basically the whole setup in terms of technically. Because what I find is more important is having intuitive controls that allow you to detach from this whole environment and enjoy, again, mixing and performing. And the key to that, in my belief, is having a control surface that enables you to, like I say, intuitively and kind of almost instinctively interact with the music without having to think about the positions of various controls or parameters or what you're actually doing, is to just do it. Okay, and having used lots of different bits of hardware, it started with things like the MPD. I've been through various manifestations of the MPD, the 24, the 32 is my workhorse, has been for years, rock solid. But all the ones I tried, even the MPD, which was almost perfect, still didn't have quite everything, and I found myself always adding more controllers, stuff like this Ion thing, you know, really cheap and cheerful, but it's got buttons, faders, it's got buttons that light up, so you know the state of those particular activators. But I was always having to add things to get the full setup that I wanted. And that included things like visual feedback. So one thing is having a great control surface. Another thing is having a control surface that gives you the proper indication of the state of everything. So you can see what filters are on, what effects are being applied, without having to go back to the screen and look at the track and see what the hell am I doing. So what came about as the solution, although I was reluctant to take it up at first, was the iPad. Okay, so on the iPad there are a number of different apps. The one I'm using is TouchOSC, but the Lemur does the same thing, and there are others. And it enables me to design and build my own interface, which might sound complicated, but actually wasn't too complicated. Like everything, there's obviously elements of it that were a bit tricky, but you know, this was fairly straightforward interface to design. And because I designed it myself around my core setup that I've evolved over time, it's all the parameters that I normally want to manipulate in a position where I understand where they are, and that's really intuitive to me, and that's the most important thing. It's intuitive to me. It's not a standard DJ setup that is great because anyone can use it, but it doesn't enable me to really express you know, the way that I perform to the max, really. So I use this, and I'll just give you a quick demo. Actually, maybe show you what's on the screen first. Maybe with a microphone so you can hear. So on the screen here you can see basically got quite a few things going on here. But it's effectively I've got volume and track activators in the middle. I've got track clip triggers at the top here, BPM and battery and stuff in the middle. High, mid and low kills for left and right. I've got filters for left and right. And then I've got things like my reverses and my volume envelopes on switches at the bottom there. Reverbs and delays are all set up on 2-dimensional and touch sensitive triggers, so really easy to manipulate multiple parameters at the same time. And then the loop A and loop B are on the outsides, and they have obviously the capture controls as well as the loop controls, and again the filters and EQs, and the same sort of pumping and reversing effects at the bottom. Really straightforward, but everything that I need to effectively mix tracks together. Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of a demo of how this works. Launch track. There we go, filters on. Take your time. Filter here. Low, mid and high kills. Track on, off. And now I can capture a loop in loop B here. Okay, like that. I've got volume for it, filters, reverse, envelopes, another track. Okay, really, I mean, everything's where I want it to be, and I can pick it up and walk around with it. Fabulous. Okay, really good stuff. Okay, so now I've started adding things to that, such as the Kinect controls. So what I've got here is a program called Synapse, and that's picking up, you can see that's the Kinect skeleton there. So that's data points that the computer can pick up. And then using Max for Live, some clever people have designed various patches, which you can do yourself if you've got a bit of time to study how it works. But I've basically set up the most fundamental and simplest controls. So for example, deck A, up and down with this hand is the filter. And deck A, sorry, that's deck B. Deck A, up and down with this hand is the filter. And to turn it on and off, it's a sudden movement. It's a sudden movement to the right. Okay, and I've also got like reverbs and delays on my left hand moving backwards. Okay, again, really simple controls, controlled by really simple movements, up and down, left and right. It's actually surprisingly accurate, and I'm definitely going to be using it. My only concern is other people jumping in the picture and, you know, and trying to manipulate it. But I've already discovered that it's actually quite hard to steal somebody's skeleton map, because we've had 2 or 3 people in here. So once it's locked onto you, it's quite hard for it to move on to another person, which is great. So I'm going to be trying that actually next weekend. So then, like, the only thing really missing from that, because that's giving me the ability to move around, control things, and do all that stuff wirelessly. I've got all the controls that I'd normally set up. I could expand it and have more decks and stuff, but again, I find if you've got too many things going on, you can't really get precise about anything. So, you know, that's kind of how I work. And the final part of this picture is something that's just kind of been added, is a new patch that I've got for the push. This is a PXT patch. And it enables the push to operate in its normal mode, so I can trigger clips and control device parameters and macros, any of that stuff. I can also even start adding extra tracks and programming beats and stuff if I really wanted to, but I'm not really into doing that when I'm DJing. I do a live performance of my own sort of music using different templates and stuff if I'm doing that. For DJing, I like to add some things to DJing, but I don't tend to like to take it to completely destroying the tracks and making new things out of them. That's great. Some people do that, and I love it, but it's not something that I'm that keen on at the moment. Anyway, but it also enables me, if I go into user mode, to start using some really amazing functions. Okay, and these are things that we're missing from Ableton in terms of making it match up to Traktor. Now, the first thing here is that basically, if I just get this, I have to make sure I'm on the right clip. Okay. And I'm just going to start it off. I can see you standing there. Take your time. I'll say bye. Okay, so I'm just sort of still learning my way around the menus a little bit there. It's got three main functions that are amazing, and they're kind of they're in two different views. One is per track, and one is looking at the whole session in terms of separate tracks. So you can perform these functions as either within a single track or a single clip, or you can do it on a global scale with all the clips in that set. Now, the most interesting part of it is the detail within one set, within one track. So I've got the track now. What it's done is it's subdivided the track, however long that track is, into 64 blocks here. And using these blocks, I can create various size loops within that entire track selection. I've made the track 128 bars for this because I found that gives me exactly 4 bars for each of these. So I can literally make a 4-bar loop anywhere within that track, or an 8-bar or a 16-bar, or any multiple of 4 bars at any point within that 128 bars. And I can obviously expand that. If the track's longer, but then the subdivisions become more than 4 bars, which can get a little bit tricky to calculate in your head, but it's still workable. And then the other thing about that is once you've selected that loop, for example, that loop is then separately subdivided into a further 64 segments, which are accessible as cue points in the top area here. So if I highlighted the first 16 bars there, these 32 buttons at the top here will now equate to a perfect half bar each. Okay. And I can jump. I mean, just notice the cue points on screen here. I can literally jump to any cue point, and that's just on a short loop. If I set the whole track, okay, and so that's already starting to give me almost complete control that I would have inside Traktor, because it's instantaneous in Traktor. You can really quickly set up cue points and stuff. In Ableton Live, typically it takes time and you have to prep beforehand. This means you don't really have to do that. You just have to set nice divisible lengths for your tracks, which is easy enough to do with some very simple dividing by 4 maths. And that's kind of a whole picture, albeit brief, of the various different bits of technology that I'm using or employing at the moment. Primarily the iPad, The push control thing, I wasn't planning to incorporate the push into my DJ sets, but this PXT plugin patch is just it's just too good to not be used. To be able to immediately select loops within tracks and just play around with those loops and re-trigger within those, and then of course immediately apply any effects that are going that are set up through the iPad. So it's just okay. Cool. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overall thing. And again, the beauty of that is that everything is coming through live, and it's all coming out the master track, and yeah, so my levels are all going to be really nice, and it's going to sound really fresh. And of course, yeah, the sound engine, well, whatever. They're all pretty much of a much. You know, the difference between two different playback pieces of software is nowhere near the difference between two various bits of audio recorded at different audio qualities, or the difference between playing an MP3 versus a WAV is much bigger than any difference than the audio engine between Traktor, Ableton, Logic, whatever is going to be. So providing that you're playing high quality audio in all of these things, you know, the differences in sound quality are arguable, and if anything they're going to come down more to your audio interfaces than the actual engine, if you like, of the software. Anyway, those are my thoughts, and that's a bit of an outline of my setup. I hope you find it informative. If you've got any questions, whack them up and I will try to answer them as best I can. Adios, muchachos.